Growing up in the later years of the 2000s, I was unaware of Even Stevens' existence until a couple years ago. Eventually, I binge-watched the entire series during one summer. As a side note, I wanted to do a special shout out to the Even Stevens Ranked blog. Seeing how someone else viewed the episodes was a really fun experience. My very first impression of the finale was that it was a bit underwhelming. I'll get into more about that later. Anyways, in case you haven't watched the show before, Eileen Stevens, the mother of Lewis and Ren, is a California state senator. The episode starts off with an election update. Eileen Stevens faces a tight race with Charles Nuck, but Eileen is declared the winner. This means that the family has to make a move to Washington, D.C. Things quickly get awkward between Lewis and Tawny. Also, I like the use of cinematography during this scene. There's physical space between Lewis and Tawny showing how emotionally distant they are. Another thing I noticed is that the science teacher from Influenza the Musical shows up, probably because they didn't have many teacher characters. Anyways, Twitty convinces Lewis to tell Tawny how he really feels after he chickens out. And Coach Tugnut is training Donnie to be a rhythmic gymnast in the Olympics.
I have it on good authority that by the next Olympics, men will be competing too.
Wrong.
Donnie breaks the news that they have to move to Washington, D.C. Tugnut is devastated, to say the least. Next, Lewis sets up a camcorder to make a tape for Tawny. Now, there is a subplot with Ren trying to come up with a replacement friend to tide Ruby and Monique over. But it doesn't add much to the plot, so we'll ignore it.
Bruh.
Lewis enlists the help of Tom to deliver the tape to Tawny. Because of Tugnut's strange fixation on Donnie, he decides to move across the country to Washington, D.C. Surprisingly, there's a really dark joke for a Disney Channel show. It's implied that Coach Tugnut's wife is cheating on him.
Oh, and she's been working the night shift over at Romano's Pizza.
Coach, Romano's Pizza closed like 2 years ago.
It did?
Yeah.
Yikes. In a sudden turn of events, there's a recount in the race. Eileen Stevens lost the election by a slim margin. Now the Stevens family must change their plans again. This puts Lewis in a tough spot with his heartfelt videotape in Tawny's hands, though she reveals she hasn't watched it yet. In a scene showcasing the physical comedy the show is known for, Lewis and Beans sneak into Tawny's room to retrieve the tape. Beans ends up falling asleep. Very narrowly avoiding Tawny, Beans grabs a tape on the TV set, but not before breaking Lewis's fingertips. Also, you gotta love the fast-forward technique used in many Disney shows at the time. After he returned home, Lewis realizes that the tape Beans grabbed was actually made by Tawny. What follows is a truly wholesome sequence for a Disney Channel show.
I like the way you look at me. You have this look you do. Right after I do something stupid, you give me this look. It's like you're gonna get mad, but then you just smile.
Also, Shia LaBeouf's acting in this scene showcases some of the best acting that I've seen in a Disney Channel show. He truly deserved his Emmy he won for working on the show. Side note here, a lot of the Disney Channel shows of the early 2000s have continuity issues. But in a really cool moment, Tawny references the first time she meets Lewis in the series.
And then you fell off the flagpole, and I just remember thinking how funny you were.
It's a nice gesture that the writers acknowledge fans who've been watching from the beginning. The two ride off into the sunset together. Just kidding, guys. They join hand in hand for some food in the cafeteria. Finally, the last scene in the series involves Coach Tugnut in Washington, D.C. Tugnut has always struck me as the guy who peaked in high school who has to live through Donnie. It makes me a bit disappointed that this is the last scene in the series. Basically, Tugnut never heard about the recount and is stuck in DC without Donnie. I get that the scene is supposed to be funny, but Tugnut's performance comes across as melodramatic. One last thing to mention is that the guy who plays Beans seems like a class act. On the Even More Stevens podcast, he mentioned that after the show wrapped, he gave gifts to all the main cast.
You almost got emotional when we were showing you this the other day.
Yeah, I gave one to everybody.
Don't get him.
So I have this little silver star keychain that says on it, Nick, castmates once, friends forever. Love, Steven, aka Beans.
The Even Stevens series finale struck me as underwhelming on my first watch, as it feels like it's a regular season episode that was rewritten at the last minute as the series finale. Still, as far as season finales go, it's a decent episode. It finally wraps up the Lewis and Tawny romance, giving closure to its audience. My biggest gripe with the finale is that it sets up a story and then discards it halfway through. Although Even Stevens only made it to 65 episodes, it's probably for the best. Fans of the series never got to see their favorite characters get flanderized. That is it for this video. Thank you all for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe and watch out for more.